Welcome back to the Price of Business. This already is the final segment of today's program. Kind of special. We did fewer segments than normal, but we did longer segments because we had some pretty important people to talk to. And always delighted when I can squeeze Steve Beaman in for 2 segments when he comes on for his weekly time on our program. And enjoy that time to be able to talk to him. Steve, talk about the biggest news stories of 2012. And some of the things to look forward to for 2013 as well. We'll be doing a little bit of that this segment. Talk to me a little bit about the phenomenon that we call Scott Walker. Talk a little bit about him. I think he is, for those who are tired of government force and are looking for limited government, he's got to be kind of a source of optimism and for hopefulness.
Well, I think the Scott Walker election in general was a bit of a shock to people. I think the odds-on favorites were that he would win. And so you have a situation there where he didn't win, but he has sustained a voice that a lot of people are going to. I think he is the middle side of the Republican Party.
Hold on. Wait a minute. I'm sorry to interrupt. Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin?
You know what? I was wrong. I was talking about Scott Brown.
There you go. Yeah. So Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin, I can't be worried. Hey, was there some election I missed? Not only did Scott Walker win, he won twice.
And Scott Walker in Wisconsin, I appreciate you bringing me back to that because he is a true force. Now, what you had is a fight in Wisconsin that is all about public employee unions and their strength in an economy. In the state of Wisconsin, they were running massive deficits on an unsustainable path, and Scott Walker stood strong. You can love him or hate him, but you have to understand he stood strong, and he effectively changed the relationship in Wisconsin between governments and public employee unions.
Oh, yeah. Scott Walker is one of my heroes when I've given up on political heroes many years ago. It's always delightful to be able to have one every once in a while that you can look at and say, that guy is a rock star. That guy is a hero. That is Scott Walker for me. I'm a huge Scott Walker fan. Talk a little bit about, and of course, what we're seeing, I think, is the best leadership in the Republican Party is on the state level. You got your Scott Walker there. You got the John Kasich in Ohio. You're surrounded. Unfortunately, your state hasn't been so blessed, but you're surrounded by some pretty awesome governor leadership in a region that has lacked that for a long, long time. I think about the relatively new governor of Michigan, who's no Scott Walker, but he's quietly doing things in Michigan that people have never thought would happen in that state.
That's exactly right, Kevin. And the reason I brought Scott Brown up, by the way, is my mind is on health care a little bit as another major story. And, of course, Scott Brown was intricately involved in the health care debates, which are continuing in this nation. But, yes, to your point, Scott Walker has proved leadership to Ohio, which is now embroiled in the same battles. And around this country with Bobby Jindal and others, we have very strong conservative leadership that will show itself in the next couple of years. Clearly, another story, though, goes to health care, and that it is now embedded in the American culture, so folks can look to see their health care costs rise in 2013, at least 10%, if not 20, 25% for private carriers. They will be required to do that as a result of the implementation of the new Affordable Health Care Act. So that's a huge story people need to be aware of.
Yep, 10%, roughly a 10% jump for health care in 2012, and we ain't seen nothing yet. There hasn't even been a serious implementation. In fact, I think it was closer to 14% was the increase in 2012. I think 20% plus is extremely, it's very, very likely going forward. I think one of the most shocking news stories for 2012 for political junkies like you and me was the announcement by Jim DeMint that he was going to leave the U.S. Senate. And I don't think there's been any person in recent years who's had a more profound impact on any legislative body in such a short period of time than Jim DeMint. When you look at the Pat Tooneys, the Ted Cruzes, the Rand Pauls, all of these people that simply never fit the U.S. Senate mold, that he single-handedly went out there and got, virtually single-handedly got him elected. I don't want to overstate his role. I was devastated to hear that he was going to leave the U.S. Senate. Happy for him, but really worried about the Senate. Who's going to do that heavy lifting that Jim DeMint was doing?
Well, we're clearly going to see issues there with Boehner being reelected to the speakership. I know he has come out openly and said he will no longer have any negotiations in private with the president, because for Speaker Boehner, it was really and truly a painful period of time with this last discussion. But, an interesting side note of Jim DeMint, and I think you're seeing this in some of the elected people, those who have true beliefs and true ideologies they subscribe to are beginning in themselves to become someone disaffected with Congress. I think Jim in many ways thinks he can do more good outside of Congress with the Heritage Foundation than he could do within Congress. And I think we're hearing some rumblings of that across the board. Even the politicians themselves realizing that this system has real problems. And it's not being led by the White House. It's being dysfunctionally led in the Senate and in the House. And so we've got even the politicians saying there has to be a better way.
There has to be a better way. And, and I look at the guys that are in there. Pat Toomey is one of my heroes. He's a great American. He comes from a state where it's hard to be as conservative as he has, and there's few as conservative as him, And of course, now Ted Cruz, who doesn't have a record yet, but I only have very high expectations. Rand Paul. But I don't see any of those guys having the acumen and the political prowess to be a Jim DeMint, at least not yet.
We haven't seen it. We have not seen leadership established on the Republican side that will be able to compete with the leadership of the Democratic side. And it's becoming increasingly more difficult for Republicans from this standpoint. Their basic message is to the American people, we want to give less government to you. And that message, when you have 46 million Americans now on food stamps through 2012, that gets to be a very difficult message to sell. So the Republicans will need an ideological leader who can educate people to the reality of these budgets, to make them understand that this largesse coming out of Washington is fully unsustainable. Yes, it may benefit you, but in the long run it will destroy a nation.
Yeah, and it's completely saddled on the backs of generations that haven't even been born yet. And, and this to me is the epitome, and you and I need to do a whole segment on this, because it's like you and I are talking a foreign language to most Americans on why the Founding Fathers despised democracy. They saw democracy as just one of the forms of tyranny that were out there. You've got your oligarchies, you've got your autocrats, and then you've got your mobocracy. And we've got living proof that that's the case, as current generations that can vote literally steals the futures of those who aren't born yet.
Oh, Kevin, you hit on such an important thing. I was at a meeting last night with a former congressman here in Illinois, a guy named Joe Walsh, who the Tea Partiers around the country know. And he talks specifically about the generational effects of transferring debt down to our children and our grandchildren. As you and I know, we're transferring now $160,000, give or take, to every child in this country. That's not fair. It's a moral injustice. We cannot do it. And when you talk about the type of government we have, it is still in some places common to say the Pledge of Allegiance, which we pledge allegiance to a republic, not to a democracy, but to a republic. And we need to educate people on what that means.
Yeah, and it's and it's more than representative democracy, which is what people who think they're in the know like to describe it. A republic is very specific. It means rule by law. Rule by law, which means the law goes above any whim of any mob. You know what? A representative democracy is still a democracy, and it's still that those representatives are controlled by the whims of the mob. What we have to have is rule by law, which, let's face it, we look more and more like a third world petty regime every single day in regards to the law.
Kevin, we cannot sustain as a nation when we have leadership by poll results. It just won't work. We need the law equally applied across the board. We need leaders who stand for that rule of law. And we need the academic community to come together and understand that mobocracy will not win, and it cannot work.
Nope, never have, never will. And people don't understand that. The founders understood that. the wolves, which are the government, has been teaching the sheep for generations the type of government they've wanted, which is mob rule. And we are now seeing the fruit of it, with $16 trillion debts being settled on those who have not even been born yet. All right, 2013, with just a minute or two left. We talked a lot about 2012. Great segments. By the way, you'll be able to find these segments over at usdailyreview.com. And I'll probably be talking about this in my new column in the Huffington Post as well, because I think it's been great content we've been able to cover. But 2013, what are you excited about? What do you, let's talk end on a positive note.
Well, I'm very excited about the work that we're doing, Kevin. I think you and I together are beginning a march that truly helps transform a nation. I think as people become disaffected with government, they're looking for alternatives, and they're understanding that knowledge is power, and knowledge with action is superpower. And I think you and I can bring that knowledge to people. So in 2013, people can begin to understand how to use the economy that we have to their benefit. I'm very optimistic about that. We do have some good things going on. Again, corporate America has a lot of cash. It can re-inject into the economy. On a global scale, we're seeing a lot of development in the Far East, the growth of a middle class in India and other nations. So we have a lot of possibility for business growth, for economic growth, which will lead to jobs and other things. And we have to temper that with an understanding that we compete with those folks, so we need to be better educated than ever to have a competitive workforce, and you and I have the tools that people can begin to understand what they need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really are looking forward to helping people move from victim status, and being accommodative to government, to really having an ownership attitude, a we the people attitude when it comes to government. And that really requires a paradigm shift, doesn't it?
It does. And again, I think you and I are at the forefront of it. I just read an article today about how people are looking for more socially interactive investments in their portfolios. They're looking for more things, almost like the 60s once again, where we're looking for the deeper benefit to things. And what you and I are doing is at the forefront of that, because we've got to take people in the future away from this belief that someone else is responsible for my life. We need to help people, but to do that, you've got to give them the tools. You can't just say it. And that's where what we're doing is so very important.
Yeah, if we just say it, we'll be just like the politicians out there. There will be not a hair's difference. We need more than just talk. We do need action. That's exactly what we're trying to do. If you want to be a part of the action, we want you to learn more about it. You can email me at info@usabusinessradio.com. That's info@usabusinessradio.com. And we get lots of questions and stuff. We're looking forward to making things happen as we grow in 2013. It's so weird to say 2013. Tell me what again, your website, how people can get more information.
Folks can come at stevebeamangroup.org, and they can get those weekly insights. We're looking at a market that is going to be very volatile, I think, in 2013, so they want to stay up and aware of what you and I are doing.
Absolutely, and it's really easy to do that, stevebeaman.org. You can get his weekly column over at usdailyreview.com. I love it. I'm getting great positive feedback from that as well, and it's one of the reasons why Technorati is ranking US Daily Review as one of the fastest-growing news websites for influence in the entire blogosphere, and we thank you, to the reader, for doing that. Steve Beaman, you catch him here every single week. He kind of puts us on a great footing. First show for 2013 live by me. Couldn't expect to do it with anyone else, and got him for extended time. Very sweet. Thanks, Steve Beaman.
Kevin, thank you for having me on. I apologize for my little faux pas in the beginning, but I wish well to both Scotts as they go forward.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Scott Brown's certainly healthier than anything else Massachusetts could produce. So I'm with you on that. And no problem on that. Faux pas make radio interesting. Thank you, my friend.
Indeed. Have a wonderful year. I look forward to next week.
You bet. All right. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope you spend it sensibly listening to this great station.